Hello, guys. Welcome. So today I'm going to discuss about project management. So I'm planning to do a series where I discuss about the key disciplines and the departments within software development, and I'm also going to limit it within 30 minutes, maybe a lot less than that. And for this discussion, I'm going to limit myself for a kind of project where we are doing, let's say, new application development or a new product development. And I'm also going to discuss mainly about how I see this particular departments and what are the kind of SOP and protocols we try to follow and my team tries to follow. So let's start about project management. So what project management is basically about managing a project. It's about managing the time, the stakeholders, the internal team, the clients, the risk, the deployments, the go live, even maintenance, if it comes to that, and also requirements, testing, quality. I mean, all sort of managements that you can think of. And project management is a vertical, I think, that's almost required in all the organizations. So if you're trying to build a submarine or a spaceship that goes to the moon, or even if you're planning to give some service, maybe in AI, then also project management is required. So it's a cross departmental, cross domain kind of a field where it's very critical for the industry in general. So now, talking about a project where we are doing a development from scratch. So the key aspects of that kind of a project would be um, a sales team, transferring a project to the engineering team. So what will typically happen is that we'll start off with a kickoff, and in the kickoff, first kickoff will be the internal kickoff, where the sales team will hand over the project to the uh, internal team that is being assigned to the project. And then the next kickoff will be with the client, where both teams introduce each other, and also we try to gather a bit about the project. So now when the internal kickoff happens, we get the KT basically from the sales team, along with that all the documents that was shared by the client, that was created, maybe some risk plan, maybe some requirement document, obviously some estimates and other stuff. So all those documents are being shared to the development team, and the development team, under the guidance of the project management team, will be reviewing all those requirements before going on to the client call. And in the client call, obviously, we typically do not work just like engineers. There are projects where we need to work just like engineers, because the client probably has a big team, and we are working as a part where multiple different other vendors are also working. But on other projects, we also work like consultants, where we consult about the business, if it is within our domain, or if we have any subject matter expert for that matter. And also we do heavy consulting on technical aspects, as we should, and also other aspects. So we are there to make sure that the project is successful, and I think that's the most important thing a project management team is there for. They are there to make sure that the project is successful at the end of the day. It is meeting the client expectation, it has a certain quality, it has been done within a fixed time frame or a defined time frame. And also, uh, the project management team will try to ensure that we get a healthy profit out of that project. And for any for profit company, profit is important, as important as delivering a successful project. But for a project manager, I think the most, like, they should be most loyal to the product that they are trying to develop, not the client, not the company, but the product. Obviously the vision will come from the client, obviously the manpower will come from the company, but it's the product that you should be most loyal to. Obviously there are other parameters that will need to be taken into factor as well. Now, when we talk about the project management team, the team will basically consist of multiple members. And when we talk about project management office, the PMO, as I like to call it, we'll also have two different other roles that is not directly linked with project management, but it is somewhere correlated. Now we'll start off with a, delivery manager. Will be probably reporting to director of projects or engineering, and then the delivery manager will be managing a few group project managers or a senior project manager, who may or may not be there on a project, but definitely a project manager will be there on the project, who will be assisted by a project coordinator or a project lead. Um, and then, as I mentioned, the two other roles would be a business analyst or multiple business analysts and solution architects. They also contribute and assist the project management team throughout the journey of a project. Now, soon after the kickoff, what we start off with is the discovery. So discovery is basically planning, analysis about the project, and also high level requirement gathering. So to start that, we first create a project brief. That's pretty much an internal document, and that's coupled with a project brief. That's an external document that's shared with the client. And what a project brief will typically have would be the project team, the configuration, the kind of compliances we as an organization are looking for, the kind of constants, assumptions we have put in on the project, the kind of meetings we are planning for, the escalation matrix, the kind of configuration management, and a lot of other details that the client will need. And it will give them a kind of idea how we plan to manage the project, and how we plan to take them to the final goal of the particular engagement. Now, in the discovery phase, the most important thing we'll do is create the epic mapping. So epic mapping is a document that we typically follow, where we kind of create the skeleton of a project. By skeleton, I mean the high level requirement of a project that is not too high level, but it is also not too low level. What I mean is that it will have all the epics, all the stories under the epics, and all the stories will have probably one or two line definition. Also, a kind of priority with Moscow categorization, the kind of the class of user story, um, the components and other stuff. And also, we do estimates on top of the E1, sorry, on top of the EM as well. And when it comes to estimate, we call it as E0, that's the sales estimate, then E1, that's coming out of the EM, and then once we do the sprint planning, we get the E2 estimate, and that's the final estimate. And if there are any deviations between E0 and E1, or E0 and E2, or E1 and E2, we have a very open and candid discussion with the client. We not like, not all the clients may not may yeah, obviously, like, not all the clients will have budget for um, additional features, but that's where we have to put in our minds, being the experts within this field. We have to curate the requirement to make sure that we give the client a subset of the requirements that fits their budget, and also um, gets the job done for the end clients, right? And one of the mistakes we do, being experts, and also the client does, is like, we sometimes try to put in a lot of features. And I think it's very important to make sure that an MVP stays an MVP, and it's not becomes a full-fledged product, and it's just being called an MVP for the sake of it. So we have to make sure that we are doing an MVP before we get into the further details. Obviously, if budget is a constant, or even if budget is not a constant, that can be a good option, but it depends. Like, some of the clients may be at a mature stage where they have all the requirements and they exactly know what to do. Then obviously we can go out for full-fledged final kind of a product. Now, once the EM is finalized and we do the E1 estimate, we move into the design phase. And I like to bring in the concept of agility here. What I mean is that we can do it like we do all of the requirement gathering, then all of the design, and then all of the development, all of the testing, like basically a waterfall kind of a method. Or we can go for a pure agile where only a particular sprint is groomed, and then that is designed and that is developed, and like that. Or we can have a hybrid approach as well. So how much of waterfall, how much of agile, we see it as a spectrum. And then we uh, like consider a particular balance based on the particular requirement of the client, and also go to market strategy, budget, scale, complexity, and other factors. So that is um, very different from projects to projects, and there's no rule that fits all the sizes. So it's has to be the judgment and the particular nuances of that project that actually determines our course of action. Now, when we go into the design phase, the most important thing a project manager will have to keep in mind is that the designs are not taking more time than usual. I mean, that's for all phases basically, but here iterations becomes important. So let's say we are doing um, design, we have to make sure that the iteration count is within a particular set limit, so that our estimations are not going over and beyond. And also what we do is that we take approval for each of the screens we have designed separately. And if there are changes on top of the approved designs, we can call for a CR. Obviously that project brief will make it absolutely clear what a CR is and how we manage it. So before, so I missed that requirement gathering step. So after E1, what we do is that we go take that EM, put it in Confluence, and then further describe it. So what an EM will have is basically, it will have, let's say there's a page, a listing page. It will have that we need a listing page for this entity, and these are some of the details we need, very high level. Uh, we may not know at that stage what are the columns, what are the filters, what are the sortings, what are the like pagination, or if any KPIs are going to be there, or any buttons or anything. We probably do not know that at the EM stage, but at the requirement gathering stage, that has to be laid out in detail, because that will be the bible of the project, and every person will take cues from there as to what that project or the product actually means. So now if you are talking about, let's say, a designer, they will take that into reference. If you're talking about a tester, they will take that into reference for their test cases. Many of the clients will try to hire external testers. Again, they will take those requirements only. The client, while validating the works that you have done for them, will refer to that. And also the managers, if there are any CRs or anything comes up, will refer to this document. So that's very important. So uh, like highlighting all the features properly after discussing with the client is very important, one of the most important things of the project. And obviously at that, at this stage, I think you can get some CRs that come up. Typically things will new things will be added. There are scenarios where things can be reduced as well. Business priorities may shift. A lot of things can happen. Now, once the once the requirement gathering is done, like all the details are being documented and all, we'll move into the design phase. And as I mentioned, all the designs one by one will take approval, and then we'll move into the development phase. Before we move into the development phase, we will do a developmental planning phase, where and obviously we'll also do the technical analysis. So when we talk about requirement, there are three kind of requirement. The first requirement would be the functional requirement, and the second requirement would be the technical requirement, and the third requirement would be the compliance requirement. Now we bundle the compliance requirement and the technical requirement into a document called a technical system solution architecture document. That's a TSSA, as we like to call it. And that document will have all the technical requirements, and your user stories will have all the functional documents, and these two will be the bible of the project. And the development team is basically consulted with, like we have to figure out the branching strategy, the environments, the level of DevOps, obviously the architecture and stuff, and also how the QA will interact, with the team, if let's say any unit tests are required, um, and a lot of other configurations are planned at this stage. And one of the most important things we do at this stage would be the sprint planning. It's basically a work breakdown structure where we are determining the uh, each of the sprint and what are the features each of the sprint will have. Now, if let's say there are 100 user stories, right? Each of the user stories can be broken down into multiple tasks or issues. For example, let's take example of login. So let's say you are having a feature of login, and your application has API, it has front end, and it also has Android and iOS development. So API will be, let's say API is being done in Python, so it will be one task. Then your let's say the web front end is being done in Angular, then it will have another task. And let's say the mobile app development is being done in Flutter, then it will have the third task. Or if it is native, then it will have four tasks. So like this will be broken down. So now 100 user stories become 400, 500 tasks. What we have to do is that we have to segment them and we have to order them, so that one important thing to understand here is that when we describe an epic, not all the tasks of an epic can be done in a serial manner. So there can be dependency where three items of an epic can be done, then we need to do four items of another epic before we move on to the last two items of that epic. So there are interdependencies, and those can become very complicated. And I think it's one of the most complicated aspects of the entire journey, doing a proper sprint planning. It's basically the order in which the task will be executed one by one after another. And when we talk about sprint, so by now we have moved into the development execution phase, where we are basically developing the sprints. In this phase, you have to ensure that the developers know, like you have to do a proper sprint grooming, where the developer, testers, DevOps, and everybody else, all the stakeholders knows what a particular sprint means, the duration of that sprint, the outcome of that sprint, and also the objective of the sprint. Now we will take a certain number of issues into a particular sprint and then distribute it among the number of developers who are there on the particular project. Typically, as a rule of thumb, we need to have sprints in fixed duration. That's very important. It's also good to have a fixed number of team, but that can um, change from time to time. But it's good to have. And also, there are activities during the sprint execution, like uh, scrum meetings. That's very important, just to make sure. I think one of the key things a project management team will ensure in this phase is to make sure that the development is being done as per the committed timeline, and we are following the roadmaps we have created. And it's very important to have a open communication with the client. um, and it's very important that you are being as honest as possible with the client. I mean, when we are doing sprint planning, we typically have two figures, one for the internal team, one for the external team. By external team, I mean the client. And we typically will have a 4 or 5 day buffer, so that even if there is a minor delay from the dev team, we are pretty much sure that the client is getting the delivery on time. But let's say that is not happening, and let's say if there are any delays, it's very important to figure out. That's why you are having scrum calls and other calls. So it's very important to figure out delays well in advance, and make sure that you discuss with your client, or if not the client, with your internal management first and then with the client. And you have to do that. You have to, like, risk planning is one of the big aspects of project management, and risk management is a thing that is across all the phases of a project. It starts with the very beginning and it ends at the very end of the project. So it's very important, and all through this different phases, the project management team will have to keep their antennas up and figure out where are the risks that can happen, and try to have contingency for them, have some mitigation for them. And that's very important. So as I said, it's very important to be open and honest with the client. Always keep the client in confidence, and I think a lot of problems can be solved by just keeping the client in confidence. You will get less escalations, and even if things goes wrong, I think you will kind of get certain sort of sympathy from the client, or maybe some sort of other emotion, but that will be conducive for you. So now, one important thing in this sprint execution phase is, since we are mostly working in an agile framework, QA also comes in. Now QA can be done in multiple different methods. We have a QA checklist, we have a lot of different, like, one good thing that we do is that we have different um, process documents, artifacts for all the phases. So how we are supposed to execute a project can differ, there can be tailoring, but the high level ideas, the key ideas, and the fundamentals are almost similar. And we have process that details out everything that we think of, like it was written by me, it's still being written by me, it's a evolving document, but it's basically my way of seeing things, the problems I have faced. And it's also something that is being followed by more or less 100 plus engineers and managers. So yeah, that has helped me a lot managing a big team, so that we all do similar things mostly. There are tailoring from time to time, but our core values will almost remain the same. So now, as I was saying about the QA phase, so the QA will like, there can be test cases written, or there may not be test cases written depending on the budget and other requirements, but uh, the QA team must be very clear as to when they are supposed to start testing. We can have multiple different configurations in that terms, like one team can give a dev release after a number of days in a sprint, and then we'll have certain time where the QA tests, and there will be a sort of iteration where the bugs are fixed, and maybe during that time the dev team will also move to the next sprint. Or there's another option where a certain section of the task will be done, moved into in QA status, or whatever the status is being maintained, and then we'll have a pipeline where those features are being deployed on a QA environment, and then the QA can test right away. So whatever the method we're doing, we have to make sure that quality is there, and we have to make sure that we are following the requirements that was written, and the requirements that were approved by the clients, um, using the designs that were approved by the clients, and everything else that was pre-discussed, like the technical solution that we have devised, that is being followed. If there are any cybersecurity aspects, I mean, those reviews are to be done. Design reviews, code reviews, architecture reviews, everything has to be done. Again, like different projects will have different configuration, but those things have to be done on a sprint by sprint basis. And let's say a project will have maybe 10 sprints, let's say, and after the end of 10 sprints, I mean, a client can plan to go live at the end of third, fourth, fifth, sixth, any sprint, depending on how they plan to go to market. But let's say for simplicity, the client wants to go live at the end of the 10th sprint. Um, then we'll have the I mean, we are basically at the end of the project, but it's not done yet. Two very important things are being need will need to be done at this time. First, we'll have a UAT, the user acceptance test. So we will make sure that the client, their target audience, maybe some focus group, actually goes through the application, actually uses it, and makes sure that it's matching their requirement expectation, and the problem statement that they tried to, like, we tried to solve at the very beginning, are being met or not. And if there are any suggestions, we may need to add one or two more sprints to make sure those suggestions are being incorporated. Many a times things are perfect almost, and then obviously we can plan to go to market. So when we go to market, there are marketing aspects as well related. So then the marketing team and the engineering team will coordinate and plan on going live. So we have a very defined process for going live, and in this phase we have checklist. We get information from the client regarding the user base, the kind of environment that they're looking at. I mean, most of it is there in the TSSA anyway, but still we kind of revalidate it, and then we prepare the environment, and then we basically go live. And typically a project will require maintenance, so the same vendor who has done the development may or may not do the maintenance, but it's better for the client to engage the same developers because they will take less time to get accustomed to the new system. So that's was about like how a project looks like from start to end. I was mainly speaking as a project manager here, but later on I'm planning to like um, discuss a bit about all the different verticals: development, engineering, analysis, and then DevOps, and like all other verticals, operations. But yeah, I think that was my limited understanding about project management within a limited time, and I just gave a holistic view. I plan to follow up this with more detailed, in-depth summarization, and probably showcase my process, the kind of process I have envisioned and my team follows, and the kind of formats, templates, guidelines, and checklist we follow. And we have a centralized repository of all the processes. So you have a process database where all this is maintained, and that centralized repository is being used by everybody within the organization. And we also have a lot of blueprints in Confluence, some formats in Jira, and other stuff. So I think that's it about the project management. And thank you for watching this. Yeah, it has been 26 minutes, almost 27. So yeah, I mean, I planned on doing this for like 10 minutes, and this is very new for me. um, I did not imagine that speaking just in front of a camera can be this difficult. It's obviously a learning curve. Obviously, probably I'll get better in due time. But thank you for managing, and thank you for like if you're watching this from start to end. Yeah, special thank you. I mean, probably I would have lost my interest, but anyways, thank you, and bye.